It says duplicate stream key.
Yeah, so we're live now.
I don't see I don't see ourselves though.
Oh, we're live.
Oh, no, we're live.
Great.
Okay, great.
All right, I think we can get started then. All right, so I think we can get started. So sorry guys for the technical difficulties, but we're live now. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Alan. I am the partnerships lead for Developer Student Club here at UNC Chapel Hill, and I am a first year student. And I'm joined on the call with Max and Cecilia, who are both also part of DSC. Do you guys want to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, my name is Max. I'm currently a first year at UNC Chapel Hill studying computer science. Really excited to be here and so that you all can learn more about Arnav and his time at Amazon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cecilia. I'm the lead of DSC UNC this year, studying computer science and information science, and I'm super excited to be here and thankful that Arnav is here with us today.
And I want to welcome our speaker tonight, who's Arnav, who is a Amazon software engineer and a UNC alum. Thank you for coming, Arnav.
Hello, my name's Arnav. I work at Amazon. I've been there about a year and a half. I graduated from UNC in 2019. Happy to be here. Happy to share some thoughts with all of you and share some of my experiences.
All right, I think we can just start off with a little bit of background. So Arnav, just want to get to know you. So like, what is your role at Amazon? What are you like passionate about? And, I think a lot of students are wondering, how has COVID, changed, I guess, your day-to-day at Amazon?
Right, so I'm a software development engineer is the technical position title. Well, software development engineer 1, because it's level 1 out of 3 or so. Daily tasks are kind of what you'd expect. I write code, I write tests for the code, I deploy it and make sure that it successfully deploys to production, doesn't cause any issues there. I do a lot of infrastructure. So for example, those of you familiar with AWS or GCP know like, okay, you can have these asynchronous functions that run, you can have servers that process requests, you can have databases, you can have components that process messages. So I make sure that all of that is managed and taken care of. Let's see. And then, so I've been here, so let's see, what was next? COVID. COVID was interesting. I'm in Seattle, which was, as many of you remember, was the first area in the US that was hit. And so essentially within about 2 weeks of that, every tech company announced like, okay, you're all working from home now. And that was in March. And we're about 6-7 months in. I had an intern that I never met. I had a coworker that I've never met in person. So it's interesting, but we've managed to adapt pretty well. I just missed the free coffee.
Okay, so I think we can just move on to basically, I think what a lot of students want to hear about, which is internship and career questions. So our first pre-submitted question was, how do you prepare for a technical interview when applying to an internship or full-time position at a company like Amazon?
Right. So the big internship advice I have to give, which I've tried to talk about a lot in the Discord. Some of you know me as the one guy with the yellow name. I don't like how a lot of internship how a lot of internship tests are done. I don't like that they say like, oh, here's these very common problems that everyone sees on LeetCode, like binary search trees and things like that. But that's just my opinion. When it comes to actual internship applications, you should make sure you know the syntax, know like, how do I instantiate stuff? How do I properly create objects, just like basic boilerplate. And after that, a lot of computer science comes down to breaking a big task into a bunch of small ones, building those together and like doing each of those small tasks and building it up to like create your solution. So the skill that really helps the most when it comes to software development is that ability to see like, okay, what's the smallest problems? What are the smallest like problem units that I can break this question into? Then let me address all of those and put the solution together into a working, what's the term? Java program, I guess. So that's really the skill that I think is most important.
Great. Also, I forgot to mention, if anybody has questions, feel free to just type them in the live chat so that we can also ask them in the Zoom call. So our next question, I know you said you don't really like, leak code or whatever, but like, do you have any resources that you suggest for students to use when they're prepping for these interviews, or do you just think that it's better to, I guess, review basic boilerplate code?
I mean, I certainly think that LEET code has a lot of advantages. I think it gives you a lot of experience in seeing how problems are solved and seeing what these efficient solutions are to like a lot of common questions that you're going to see. It helps you get into the mindset of, it helps you get into the mindset of here's the general approach to solving a question. Here's like the train of thought that people have when they find efficient solutions. And then you can use that to help you with the problems you see in the future. I see a lot. LEET code is probably one of the best sources, but any site that gives you like really common questions and lets you test and lets you solve the problems yourself and see how the problems are optimally solved is going to be helpful for any internship application.
And I just kind of adding on top of what Alan was asking. So would you recommend picking a simpler language when you're doing the actual coding interview or when you're practicing, or you recommend using something more object oriented like Java, or should you stick with what you know best and is most simple?
I would say always use the language you're most comfortable with. For me, that's Java. For other people, it could be Python. I'm sure someone here is like really good with C++ or Ruby. So just when it comes to internship applications, pick the one you're best with.
Got it.
So going back to what you said, it's more about like developing that train of thought of how to solve these problems rather than like memorizing specific like techniques, right?
Yeah. So I can make these jokes because I'm confident that no one here is part of that. The only field where like memorization really matters is like medicine. If you're not in medicine, if you're in most other STEM fields, it comes down to how well can I see a brand new situation and apply what I know to solve it? And that's especially true with computer science.
Gotcha. All right. And then our next question is pretty specific. So it's, what advice would you give to students who are about to take the Amazon Software Engineer assessment?
I'd say, from the people I've talked to who went to different companies besides Amazon, so I have a few friends at Google, I have a few friends at Microsoft, things like that. They're all pretty set. The Amazon software development internship test isn't really that much different than any other one. Just the same principles I gave just the same like principles and train of thought advice I gave in the past still applies here. Know how to approach a problem, know how to break it down, know how to see like, okay, here's where I should start. Like, how would I explain this in extremely low level language? That's the best thing to be familiar with when it comes to approaching these sorts of internship applications.
So like, how did you prep for your internship application or your interview?
I did a lot of what I tell you guys about. I went to LEET code. I went to websites similar to that, which give you questions and ask you to solve them and present to you like appropriate solutions to everything that gets and presents to you like the actual solution that's the most optimal one. But what I found though was that those websites tend to be more difficult than the questions the internships throw at you. When I was, let's see, what was my test question? It was, given an array of values, find which ones appear at least 5 times. And then I had this while like a woman was interviewing me and like watching what I type. And so that's not really so a lot of the people who give interviews are just software developers at Amazon, and they know like what kind of questions are commonly given on these testing websites, and they know to avoid them and give something that like they know is going to make you think. So that's why I really stress the whole like, don't try to memorize stuff besides syntax. Don't try to memorize like any specific algorithm. Just get good at logicking your way through solving these problems.
Gotcha. And then, so we're going to shift focus, and more broad question is, how important is GPA in getting an internship/job?
My favorite question, which is not at all, not in the slightest. CS doesn't care about your GPA at all, as long as you're above the minimum that they ask for, which is usually like 3.0 or 2.8. CS as a field moves very quickly because, well, CS as an industry moves very quickly because CS as a field moves very quickly. And they've been one of the first ones to realize that you can't really summarize a person's ability by like a number that goes from 0 to 4. And so in general, they're much more interested in what have you done and what can you show us that you can do rather than GPA.
So like, do you think, just going off of what you said, so do you think like, say, side projects are really helpful in terms of like what they like to see as experience over like GPA?
The companies definitely like to see experience. The exact hiring process is still a black box to me. I think like hiring managers and recruiters intentionally like keep it vague even within the company because they don't want people to like help like their friends tune their applications to like get past any like automatic resume checkers they have. The big thing I've seen, the big shared factor is that they want to see experience. When you say like I'm proficient in Java, I know how to use SQL, I know how to use C++, they want that to be backed up with, okay, here's a thing I did with it. And especially when I give resume advice, this is the big thing. This is the big piece of feedback I have, which is everything in your resume, like they want to see stuff that's backed up by experience, that's backed up by evidence. And that can be side projects, that can be things you did in class, that can be internships you've had in the past, which are probably the most powerful one, which is probably the most powerful thing you can have on your resume. What else? And hackathons. Yeah, those two.
On top of that, would you say referrals are really helpful in getting your resume pushed past, into the pushed it to the top, or are they kind of not that necessary now?
A referral definitely helps. But at the same time, like that process is kept unclear to a lot of people within the company. The fact that it's still advertised here, the fact that like it's still a thing that we're allowed to do, not that we're allowed to do, the fact that it's still a thing means that it definitely has an impact. It definitely helps you if you get a referral to the company. I don't really have enough information to give an exact number on like here's the definite percentage improvement you have.
Got it. And would you say for getting referrals, is it best to just look at, the alumni network or personal contacts, or did you personally, utilize any referrals in your
I'm
sort of
signing myself
internship
up
search?
for this. I didn't have any referrals to the company, but to be referred, I wouldn't say it's necessary. If you want to apply to a company and you don't know anyone who goes there, I think it's a perfectly valid approach to just apply through their website. But referrals, yeah, it really comes down to if you know someone that can refer you, that's good. If you have any sort of connection, like it always helps.
Definitely.
All right, I think we have a question in the chat from Arjun who said, so he said, just joined the stream, so I don't know if this has been discussed, but the rumors about big tech companies asking really vague questions to determine your problem-solving skills. Is this true for Amazon?
I've heard that Google does that with their like, how far does this telephone wire hang if it's like 80 meters long question or any of that sort of thing. To the best of my knowledge, Amazon doesn't. Most of the interviewers when it comes to a technical interview are other software developers who work at the company. And so they tend to just give pretty straightforward questions of like, okay, can you implement this algorithm for me? Can you describe to me how you would solve this question? Google, I've heard it's kind of a coin toss. It depends on who's interviewing you and what process you're going through. I don't think Microsoft does much of that. Excuse me.
Great. And I think what you said earlier provides a great segue into our next pre-submitted question, which is, did you have an internship with Amazon or another tech company before being employed full-time?
Yeah, so I had two internships. I had one with the NIH in RTP. That was the NIH summer internship program. That was a data science internship. I did a lot of coding in R, which is a really bizarre language. Then after that, I got an internship at Amazon. This was the summer between my junior and senior year. And then at the end of that, they gave me a full-time offer for the following year. And so thankfully I could go into senior year knowing like, okay, I've got a job offer lined up. I can rest a bit easier. In total, in general, especially in the tech industry, it's kind of expected that you have an internship by the time you graduate. I personally recommend applying every summer, even if you don't get it, just because it's good experience.
So how do you turn like an internship at Amazon into a full-time position?
So internships at almost every tech company are set up with the assumption that if you do well, if you do well and you're going into your senior year, you'll get a return offer. And if you're not going into your senior year, you'll get at least a return internship offer. Within our company, so I had an intern this summer. We had a project. We estimated it would take him 12 weeks. He did it in like 9 or something like that. And then we gave him some additional tasks to fully finish his internship. And then he ended up ending a week early. And we brought all of that evidence to someone called a bar raiser, who is tasked with raising the bar. And essentially we argued for him to get a return offer. We said, okay, look at all this evidence, look at everything he's done, look at all the work he's put in. And they said, and they eventually agreed, like, okay, you've convinced me, let's give him a full-time offer. During my internship, something similar happened. I wasn't present during the argument that I gave, like my intern wasn't present. And so my mentor and my manager went before another bar raiser and they said, okay, look at Arnav. Here's all the work he's done. Here's all the code reviews he submitted. Here's his like big fat final project that runs smoothly until I left my internship. And then similarly, they said, okay, you've convinced me, like he'll have a return offer. In general, every company, whether it's big tech or something like smaller, sets up their internships in a way that they expect to give you a full-time offer.
We have another question in the YouTube live chat, which is from Blaine. He says, what are some of your best tips in order to obtain top-level interviews? Would you say attending career fairs and hackathons are the best approach, or is there a more successful path?
It's all, so in my opinion, when it comes to internships, it's all about quantity. I'm sure we're all familiar. I'm assuming things haven't changed in the 2 years since I applied for internships. I'm sure that you just get a bunch of like no responses, or you get a bunch of generic rejection letters within 2 hours of submitting your application. The best thing when it comes to internships is just to apply to as many places as possible as early as possible. I started pushing some of my mentees to apply for internships back in like August. And even like back in college, I was pushing my friends to apply for internships starting in August and September. And some of them were saying like, no, I'll just wait till spring semester. And I was like, no, don't do that. Please apply now. Apply early, apply often, get as many applications in as you can, and then see where things pan out. Hackathons and career fairs are really nice to get you in contact with a recruiter, but I haven't seen a lot of evidence that it improves your odds of actually like getting like a placement test or getting to an interview.
Great. And then we have another specific question about just coding interviews in general. So how long in advance should you start preparing for coding interviews for the junior year application season, or like any season in general?
I think if you're in your junior year and still as a comp sci major, you have a good enough understanding of computer science that you don't really need to prepare for months on end. I would say in general, like make sure you're keeping your coding skills fresh. This will be at the point where you guys are past taking, what's the new version, 210, 211, 301, or what you guys call it. You guys will probably be past those courses at that point, so you won't be doing as much like straightforward Java coding. So keep your skills like fresh. Make sure that like you still remember how to code, of course, but you only really need to start preparing once you know that you have an interview coming up. In general, they'll give you like a 1 to 2 week notice. For my internship, I think like November 1st or something, they said that I had to take an exam by like November 14th. So they gave me plenty of time to practice and prepare and whatnot.
On another note, how long would you say the internship application cycle last?
For a big tech company? Oh, what were you saying?
Oh, so by that I mean, like, is it going to end? Is it mostly done by spring, or does it continue into spring? Or
so let's see. Big tech companies that I've seen, especially during COVID times, will do 3 to 4 tests that are an hour each. And this is scattered across a couple months. In general, the time between when they get back to you from your initial, like, here's my resume, here's my contact info application, to the final one is going to be about a month to a month and a half. But they're getting better at not doing these like ridiculous interview sessions where you have to fly out to Seattle or something. One of my friends had to fly out to Seattle for a Microsoft interview because they wanted her to come in person. But thankfully, we are moving away from that. I can say it's probably 3 or 4 hours scattered across 3 or 4 tests.
We have another question in the chat. So it says, for researchers and software developers, Amazon has a lot of services available, AWS and etc. But what data sets / research tools are available, if any, and where?
Are these data sets or research tools like specifically within the AWS or?
He doesn't say, but I'm going to assume it's AWS.
I'm asking Jackson Mead directly. I'll see if he puts something in the chat. Within AWS, it's hard to give a clear answer just because there's like 110 different things. There's like 110 different AWS services. The one that I can see you guys having the most use for is Lambda. That's the one that most people are familiar with. That's just serverless computing. You can just upload your code and then hook it up to some sort of a trigger and then just run your code whenever you want it to. It's really cheap. It's really easy to set up. I can clarify a little high. So those are the big ones. When it comes to data sets and research analysis, like outside of AWS, there's a lot of, I recommend going towards any sort of open source programming language. The one that immediately comes to mind, but also is the one that I use, is R. I'm really not a fan of MATLAB because it's paid. So I would just say, in terms of tools for like research and things like that, look towards open source. Python has plenty of open source libraries. It has TensorFlow, the one that everyone uses when they say they know machine learning. They have, let's see, R just as open source. It has like hundreds of customer made packages that like help you automate all sorts of things. Let's see, within AWS, what data? To analyze data, I need to think. Shoot, what's the one for data analysis? AWS Aurora would be what it's called. That lets you like essentially do SQL queries on terabytes of data. But especially with AWS, it really just comes down to, there's 9 or 10 different services that do like marginally different things. So it really just comes down to finding which one is best suited to you.
All right. And our next question is actually from Cecilia, which is, what are the most helpful, relevant, and important comp courses at UNC?
I definitely told you this before, but it's 210, 211, 301. What's the one that's just above 301? Like 310, 311?
311.
Yeah, so 201, so 210, 211, 301, 311 are the 4 most essential courses, which are also the ones that you take first. But those are the ones that really like hammer down, like, here, you got to like code in Java and you need to understand how a computer works. One sec, I'm not in the light. I should fix that. There we go. Yeah. Those are the ones that really hammer in here's how you write Java. And that's really what companies ask for when it comes to their tests and when it comes to their internships. And after that, you just get into electives, and you should really just take the ones that seem to interest you the most. The 2 that I recommend are files and databases. I'll go put this in the chat. Algorithms, which is 550. At least in my opinion, those are the 2 most useful courses outside of the basic ones that I took at UNC.
Great. And then our next question is from Aaron. So as a first-year student, do you think that applying for summer internships is important, or would it be okay if we wanted to take this summer to work on refining our skills and personal projects? So getting an internship in the summer between your freshman and sophomore year is really difficult. I've only really seen it happen a handful of times. But regardless of that, I think the experience of applying for internships and the fact that it forces you to like retune your resume and should you make it to the second round, get you some experience in answering these tests is still worthwhile. And so it's still worth applying for internships in your first summer, just for the experience mainly. If you get it, that's great. If you don't, there's plenty of other things you can do during your first summer. My main recommendation to people is to take summer classes between your first and second summer, just because it really helps you like get an edge up and get some gen eds out of the way and get some annoying classes that you don't want to spend an entire semester doing. Out of curiosity, what did you do your like freshman year to sophomore year summer? I took classes. I took Phys 119, Chem 102, and 2 gen eds across the 2 summer sessions. And
what was it? Yeah, the summer session I took physics 119 was my hardest like point in UNC. I can say with confidence.
Yeah, Cecilia like a little bit like shocked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you took 12 credit. Wait.
I took
For
4
the summer.
sessions.
That's crazy.
I mean, it was
I
just
could
7
barely
hours.
do 6 credits over the summer. Like, I don't know how you did that.
Yeah, it was 7 per session for 2 sessions because I wanted to get really far ahead.
I guess kind of adding on top of that previous question for like freshman summer, will any of the sort of companies really consider you? So like if, like say I'm a freshman and I'm applying for a software engineering internship at Amazon, am I basically insta rejected already? Or is there like even a, maybe a chance that someone would get an interview doing that?
I've seen it happen. It's definitely not common. I would say during my internship, I'd say maybe 80-ish% of people were rising seniors. Maybe like 15 to 19% were rising juniors. And then like the remaining like 1 to 3% were what's it called?
Rising sophomores. Okay, wow. So it is possible, but just very challenging. Okay.
Our next question is from Shiva. So he says, for someone who's applying to their first internship without much project experience, how can they showcase their talent and skill to a potential recruiter?
So if you don't have project experience, you should go into one you've done in classes and what you've done on your own. If you've taken like 210 to 11, you've probably done like a pretty comprehensive project as part of your class. Highlight that. Like I said earlier, I don't know if you were here, the big thing people care about when they look at resumes, especially in tech, is experience. They want some sort of evidence that you've done something. And even if that's a personal project, even if that's something you did as part of class, it's really helpful to say like, okay, I'm really good at Java. Here's like a bunch of work that I've done in Java to show that I can do it. So to showcase your talent, personal projects, hackathons, stuff from classes, take all of those and use those to provide evidence for yourself.
So our next question is, if you get a question during a technical interview and you are not sure of the answer, is it better to say that you don't know or to just struggle and try to find a solution?
That's a good question. Let's see. So if you can implement it in code, that's the best thing you can do. If you can't implement it in code, describe how you would go about doing it. Speak about 2 paragraphs or so about, okay, I don't know how to do it, but here's the general set of steps I'd take. Like first, I would start parsing the array with 2 for loops. Then at each point, I would do this other thing and just keep going like that. If you can't do that, at that point, I would say like start doing bullshit until they realize that you're doing it, and then just say, okay, I'm sorry, I can't figure this out.
That's good advice.
Pretty much.
I guess you just got to be honest. All right, next question is, when building a competitive resume, is it more important to have a variety of experiences or a single direction / specialization?
I think that depends on you. I think you should, if you have a variety of experiences, you should highlight all of them. If you've specialized in one thing, you should point to that. If you have the choice to make where you don't know, like, okay, should I hammer in like one specific thing that I've done a lot of, or talk about a little I've done in a lot of things? That's a hard question to answer without knowing like specifics of the situation. If you can say like, I have a little bit of experience with these like 8 different programming languages, or for example, like here's a huge project that I did in Java, but I don't know any language besides Java. That's honestly a really close call, but I would lean towards single direction and specialization. The more comprehensive work, the more like complicated of a task that you can say you've done, the better that's going to look for you.
Great. And then I think we can just go on to another submitted question, which is, what are the available job opportunities for students right out of undergrad? I'm assuming this is for just computer science.
Yeah. So for computer science, thankfully, there are probably the most opportunities out of college than for any other major. Almost every company is looking to hire some sort of software developer, even if they're not a direct like software development company, like even banks, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Credit Suisse, are all looking for software developers to manage the back end of things. In terms of what kind of position you're going to get, you're going to start off with some sort of entry-level software development role, where it's here's a task, go complete it. And then once you get good enough at that, they trust you to write the tasks. And then once you get good enough at that, you start writing tasks for other people. So the job opportunities when it comes to CS are actually there's definitely a lot of them. You should look at all the tech companies in the area, and even with non-tech companies. I know I had one friend who did an internship with like a railroad company, and she just did some like back-end data management for them. Interesting. With tech, there's definitely no shortage. You just need to make sure you apply early and apply often. That's the big rule.
Do you suggest that you should apply to like every internship, I guess, regardless of like obviously you're not going to apply to like anything above your like a skill level, but like just anything, I guess, that you find online, or is there something you recommend doing?
I'd say the only reason I wouldn't apply is if it listed a skill set that I definitely didn't have. If it said like we need you to have something like C++ knowledge, I personally have just never dealt with that language. If they explicitly say that, then I wouldn't apply. And if the company looked kind of sketchy, then I wouldn't apply. But even then, they give you plenty of opportunities. Even it's like an internship offer for a reason. They don't say like, you're going to intern for us now. Even like up to the point where they give you the offer, you can say like, thank you, but having dug more into your company, I've decided not to take it. Or thank you, but I've decided to take an internship somewhere else. I think applying and getting your foot in the door is the most important thing. Once you've got an offer, you can decide what to do with it, but it's better to have that offer.
For sure. So we had another question in the chat, which was, and this is a pretty broad question, but what are the most important programming languages to master?
That's actually surprisingly easy. Java, Python, C++, in that order, I would say. In general, though, company internship applications will give you a choice of several different languages to choose from. Those three will always be available. After that, I guess after that, it's hard to say. But those are the three that are most used in tech companies. Amazon uses primarily Java, Python, and Ruby. Microsoft uses primarily C++. Google uses primarily Java, I believe. But thankfully, all three of those languages are pretty similar to each other. If you know one, it's not super difficult to learn another.
So we had a question from Richard who said, for someone who's Canadian, how much harder is it to get in at a US tech company? I don't know if you can answer this, but.
Let's see. So they would have to sponsor your visa. Big tech companies generally have the resources to sponsor your visa. I don't have too much information on that though, unfortunately. That being said, how much harder is it to get in at US tech companies? That being said, most of the big tech companies have offices in Canada. I know for a fact that there's Amazon offices in Vancouver. I know because I talk to those guys like all the time. So I don't think you'd have too much issue applying to positions that are based out of Canada. When it comes to the US, you'll want to lean towards the bigger tech companies because they have the resources to sponsor international hires.
All right, so our next question in the chat is, what is the career track you see yourself going through in the next 10 to 15 years?
So all tech companies have a similar sort of hierarchy. You start off as an as essentially an SDE1, software development engineer level 1. And then Microsoft and Google have their own version. Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Apple all have their own versions of that. That's what I am right now. That's a very basic, like here are the tasks we want you to do, go complete them. And then over time, you get more and more responsibilities. You level up, you become an SDE2, software development engineer level 2. At that point, you have more responsibilities. Now you might be designing projects. You might be mentoring like other employees rather than just interns. And you can build, and then from there, you can choose if you want to go into management, you can become a software development manager, or you can go further into being a technical lead. So that brings you into like principal developers, senior principal developers. The big chunkus of them is distinguished engineers. Google and Microsoft have their own name for them, but these are essentially the highest level software developers at the company, of which there's maybe like less than 25 of them. I'm certain at Amazon, there's 17 or 18 distinguished engineers, and those are on the same level as like, those guys are something like 3 levels below Bezos. For me personally, in my career track, I probably won't end up there within 15 years. Right now, I'm working on getting a promotion to SDE2. I'll see where that goes. But thankfully, one of the things about tech is that there's a lot of mobility options. If I want to transfer to Microsoft, if I want to transfer to a different team, if I want to transfer to Google, Facebook, to a smaller company, to a startup, there are a lot of avenues for that because of how general purpose the tech field is. I don't know C++, but if they were like, hey, we'll give you a month to learn C++, I could probably figure it out. If they said, hey, we all code in Python, I could say, okay, I'm kind of rusty on it, but I know generally how it works. In terms of career track, I can really only tell you for the next 5 years or so, which is I'm probably going to stay at Amazon, get a promotion, and then stay here for another 2 years and see what happens. Let's see. Next question, I guess.
How much relevance would a tech company like Amazon give to studying multiple fields? Personally, I'm interested in studying math along with CS and was wondering if having a different background helps.
It definitely helps. I can start by saying that if you have a second major, even if it's not tech related, actually, if you have a second major, even if it's not like tech related, if you want to have a second degree in like, I don't know, writing, that's still pretty powerful. I don't know exactly, I don't really have a good formula of like how much a second major or being interdisciplinary will help. But I'm fairly confident that if you do have a specialization in something else, if you can show that you have like a balanced skill set, companies do like to see that. Let's see. I'm sorry, I can't give super like clear answers when it comes to the hiring process. It's a pretty big black box, even for employees inside.
So our next question is related to the last one. So how important is taking a minor or even a double major within the CS field? Which ones do you recommend at UNC?
So let's see. You don't need to take a minor or be a double major. It's always helpful, and especially in the CS, with the CS degree program, you definitely have the time to take a second major, or at the minimum to take a minor. In terms of what I recommend, if it's a minor, I'd say minor in whatever you want, minor in whatever you're interested in. If that's statistics, if that's French, what are some other weird fields? Cellular biology, go for it. Just minor in whatever you want. If you want to major and you want it to be specifically tuned towards work that you do in tech, the big ones that I like are information science. Someone commented about that. Information science, just because like data science is becoming a big thing nowadays. Math, applied math, statistics, things like that. Which ones do I recommend at UNC? Mainly those ones. But don't think that a double major or a minor or 2 minors or anything like that is required for tech. This industry is very quickly shifting away from what you do in college over what can you do like actually. So if you can, I think Apple was the one, Apple started mentioning that they would stop asking for college degrees. They'd say like, if you complete these exams, like we don't care how you learned it. But I do think that shift is definitely starting to happen. And by the time some of you first years are graduating, I'm actually really interested in seeing if tech companies are going to be like asking for resumes at all. Let's see.
Garrison was the one who mentioned the information science major at UNC, but yes, like, how useful would that be?
I really like information science. I think even in my field, even in my position now as just like a regular software developer, I've like very quickly stood out as the guy who can quickly analyze like all of our logs and all of our metrics and like put together like good like aggregations and explanations of the data, because no one else in my team really knows how to manage how to like do data analysis and do like information analysis like that. I think information science as a whole is becoming like a bigger and bigger field in the tech industry. We've gotten really good at like collecting billions of data points, and now we have like 2 terabytes of data, and the next question is, okay, what can we do with it? And whether that's machine learning, whether that's just like using standard regressional analysis. I think information science is a really powerful thing to know, even like just for your personal life.
And then Cecilia had a question, was just how important is it to get a summer internship as a sophomore?
So like I said, emoji notwithstanding, you're expected to have, you're more or less expected to have an internship by the time you graduate. Having one in the summer between your sophomore and junior year is really good, but it's by no means mandatory. If you want to do research, if you want to take more classes, if you want to study abroad, all of those are like perfectly valid options, and none of them will really like hold you back from getting a good like job out of college. Obviously, like internships are good. Like having more internships is definitely like one of the best things you can have on your resume, but they're by no means like mandatory, and there's no one-way doors that have closed if you don't have 2 of them. Let's see, certifications. That's a good question.
So I'm assuming he's saying like at the point where you're applying to like internships.
Yeah, if you have like a certification in AWS, that's really tough. That one is hard for me to answer. I mean, the cop-out answer is like, yeah, obviously having it will help. When it comes to like how, in general, just because recruiting is a black box, it's hard for me to say like how much of an impact it's going to have. The only thing I can really say when it comes to certifications is they do show like there are proof of expertise in the field, which does make them good. The shared connection I've seen between a lot of the people who got internships was having some sort of like physical evidence to say that like, here's proof that I know how to do these things. Here's proof that I'm like good at Java. Certifications provide that, certifications provide that as well. So I can see them being pretty helpful. I can't give like an exact number behind it, unfortunately.
So the next question is, how important is going for a master's degree / post-undergraduate education, and what can it do differently for you career-wise?
How important is going for a master's? What can it do for you different? So let's see. In my experience, the 2 people I know with masters both started off at the same level as me. They both started off as software development engineers 1. Getting a master's comes down to, if you want to specialize into something, if you, for example, really want to work in like networking and like writing up writing up like official documents of like internet protocols and things like that, that's where masters will help. If you want to just kind of like get a foot in the door, get like into a tech company and get some experience in the tech field, I don't think having a master's or post-undergrad education is going to make a huge difference there. The point referring to when tech companies look at you, what can you do over whether you have it? So what you can do over.
Okay, so I think we can go on to, can you describe a work day in the life? Is it mostly coding or collaboration / meetings? And do you get a good amount of breaks?
So it's very do it on your own time. I have a stand-up meeting at noon, which is not stand-up comedy, but it's essentially tell us what you've done, tell us what you did yesterday, tell us what you're going to do today, tell us what blockers you're running into. And if you want to discuss something with the team, here's your time to do it. So that's every day from 12 to 12:30 or 12 to 1. We have operations meetings on Monday mornings where we look over all of our dashboards and check if anything crazy happened in the past week. One time we saw that every latency started going up. And so as you can imagine, we all kind of stopped the meeting to take a look at what was happening there. We've had like sudden spikes or drops in volume to some of our APIs. And so we would make a task to go look and see what happened there. Sometimes it was just some random client. Sometimes something weird was happening. So there's definitely like there's 1 or 2 meetings a day at a minimum. After that, we divide our work into sprints of 2 weeks. And we say, okay, here's my 3 tasks for this sprint. So for example, one of my tasks for this sprint of 2 weeks is to scale up our service by a factor of 5. So then each person has their own tasks and they're just expected to complete them. And ideally you'll have them all done by the end of the sprint. If you can't, it's not the end of the world. You just punt it to the next one. And then it goes like that on a daily basis. Let's see. In terms of like the actual work that I do, it varies from sprint to sprint. So I've had some sprints where I was just writing code, where I was just completely writing code for 8 hours a day, every day. And I was like, okay, this is wonderful. Excuse me. This sprint that I've had, like I said, I was scaling up our service by a factor of 5. So it wasn't a lot of code to be written, but it was a lot of like doing testing, a lot of configurational changes, a lot of math to see like, can we support these new limits? A lot of like calculating, like, okay, if we send this much traffic to our dependencies, are they going to yell at us? Are they going to throttle us? What's going to happen there? It varies a lot. But in general, I'd say I spent about 40 to 50% of my time coding, maybe 10% in meetings. And the other 40% is testing, making sure that stuff successfully deploys through the pipeline, fixing random issues that pop up that I feel like need to be fixed, adjusting, like making small adjustments to our service to make sure that we're running more smoothly, things like that. In terms of breaks, this outside of meetings, and honestly, even during meetings, you can essentially take a break whenever you want. People are going to ask you questions. You can say like, hey, I'm having lunch right now. Can I answer you? Can I give you an answer in an hour? The joke that I always tell is that you have like 1 day a month where you can just say like, yesterday I got nothing done. Sorry, I'll try not to do it again. And no one really cares. So it's definitely a lot less stressful than college, to give you guys something to look forward to.
Thanks, good to hear.
I think we're going to just take one more question since we're creeping up on 8 o'clock. So from Cassie, what made you want to pursue CS?
The big Chad of CS, Chris Jordan, made me want to pursue CS. I came into UNC pre-med and I took Comp 110 with him back when it still taught Java. And I don't know if it's how he taught it or if it's just like my brain is well suited to it, but comp sci comes very naturally to me, like more so than any other field that I've really like gotten into. So seeing that was like, okay, compared to like, okay, this CS is something that makes sense to me. It's something that I enjoy. It's something that I need, that like pays well. There's a lot of job opportunities when I come out of college. I think this is something I want to go into. Yeah, I definitely sent Chris Jordan like a several paragraph long email just explaining all of that to him. And then he quoted a specific conversation I had with him 3 years ago. Chris Jordan's an odd man. But
I think we can all agree we all love Chris Jordan because I'm in Comp 110 right now. It's fantastic, even though it's all virtual. But
yeah.
Cecilia, do you have anything to say?
Oh, I was gonna ask what advice you have for someone who doesn't get CS like naturally, like it doesn't come as naturally as it would for you.
So it's something like what I said at the beginning. A lot of CS is being able to break a project down into a bunch of small individual tasks and then do all of those one at a time. Do you guys remember Chris Jordan's PB&J thing? Where he like asks someone to tell him how to build a PB&J and then he just memes them. He didn't do that with you guys? Probably because it was virtual, yeah. So one of the ways he did that, one of the ways he showed like the concept of breaking down a task is that he like pulled out some peanut butter and jelly and some bread and a knife. And he said, like, okay, I need someone to explain to me, to like walk me through making a PB&J. I need you to explain it in like as low level detail as possible. Down to like, okay, pull the bread tie off the bag of bread. It's like, okay, what direction do I pull it? Okay, you pull it up. It's like, what direction is up? It's like, okay. That was one of the helpful things for me because it really showed me like, okay, like here's the level of detail and the level of specificity we have to break a task down into. And then So that's the first step. Once you can do that, it just comes down to, where do I go? Where do I go from there? After you've got those small tasks, you can think of computer science as a toolkit. If you can have like, it's a toolkit full of like all these different screwdrivers and hammers and things like that. And someone says, okay, now build a table. You should know how these tools are used. You should know like what kind, like when you see a problem, you should be able to figure out like what kind of tools you'll need to solve to do the job. So making that connection is the next thing after you're good at breaking down after you're good at breaking down tasks. You should see, yeah, let's see. So break it down into tasks, use CS as a toolkit. I think those are the two big things to focus on first. I think those were the two things that came naturally to me. I could look at something and say, okay, I think I'll probably need to have a loop and then an if statement and then like do more things within that. And then probably like take the result and add a check here. But yeah, always do things in little steps. Also, let's see, if CS doesn't come as naturally to you, if you see a problem and you can't solve it, see if you can solve a smaller problem. So for example, like if you need to parse some like values out of a column in a table, it's like, okay, I don't know how to get those values. Can I get the whole column? Okay, I can get the column. Now I have the column. Can I get a single value from it? Yes. Okay. Can I do some math on it? And then you build things up from there. Break the problem down into steps. So like try and get some of the steps done. If you can implement half a solution, you've made some progress there. Especially when I'm coding. So for example, if I need to like deploy some infrastructure and it keeps failing, I'll see like, okay, I can't deploy this database and this like other resource and this third resource. Can I deploy just a single one and see if that works? It's like, okay, that one works. I've got that done. So that's good. So that means the issue must be here. Okay, if the issue is here, like let's break that down further and things like that. It really comes down to CS is a lot of, what's the term? Encapsulation. Not encapsulation, wait. I forget the term. Shoot, I forgot what I was trying to say. Yeah, so basically the takeaways are break a task down into a series of steps, get good at using the toolkit of CS to solve those individual steps. If you can't get one, see if you can solve half of it, see if you can solve a quarter of it, and see if you can make these like baby steps that lead you towards a solution. And then eventually you can use all of those broken out components to rebuild to solve the initial problem that you were given. Is the general mindset I'd say is best to have when approaching CS. Layering, yeah, it's layering. That's correct.
All right, I think we're 4 minutes past, but is there any last minute advice you would like to give students just in general?
Let's see, when it comes to, sorry, I lost the tab. When it comes to internships, apply early, apply often. When it comes to solving problems in code, break them down into little steps, solve them each one at a time. When it comes to college as a whole, don't stress out, don't be afraid to make mistakes. I've made plenty of mistakes. I deleted all my team's alarms once for like 3 days, and we didn't notice it because we don't have an alarm on our alarms. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to fail at something. What else? Oh yeah, there's an organization called ResNet. It provides tech support in the dorms. I will always and forever vouch them and recommend all of you apply for them. You get free housing, but you have to live on campus. ResNet. I was with them for 4 years. I really like those guys, so I always have to pitch them whenever I talk about stuff for UNC. Besides that, if anyone has any questions going forward, you can find me in the Discord. I'm the only guy with the yellow username. So you can just message me from there. I get notifications for that, so I can usually respond within a day or so. Do you guys have any questions? Alan, Cecilia, Max?
I think we're good. I mean, do you guys have any questions? All right. Thank you so much, Arnav. Thank you so much. And to everybody else, I apologize for the technical difficulties before, but I hope you enjoyed our speaker session, and thank you so much for spending your evening with us. Max, could you post the Discord server or like the invite link into the chat? So
sounds good. I need to pull it up 1 second, guys.
I can do it. I like have
Okay,
it
you have it. Okay,
on
great.
hand
Thanks.
all the time. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, definitely join that. We're, all the latest updates, our events, everything you can find on the Discord. So yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely the place where I'm most active with interacting with DSC. But thank you all for having me. Thanks for letting me speak and talk about Amazon and everything else.
Yeah, we
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.